It's hard to believe, but we are just 2 days away from finding out what exactly is the MLS Cup matchup and who exactly is going to be playing in those games. And then in 13 days, we are either going to have a new champion or we're going to have a repeat champion this year as Atlanta United. Last year, champion is still in the playoffs and that they are part of the other conference matchup that I will talk about later tonight. But first, let's talk about the Western Conference final, which will happen tomorrow between LAFC versus Seattle Sounders. And there's no doubt that a lot of people saw this one coming. We knew that these two teams was potentially going to be facing off in the conference final, and that I think back when both of these teams were facing off each other in the regular season, I kind of even said that get ready to watch the preview of the Western Conference final because I think, as much as how crazy the West is, you just feel like these were probably the two best teams in the Western Conference, and that here we are, the two best team in the Western Conference are trying to fight it out so that they can be representing the Western Conference heading into MLS Cup. Five things to watch out for in this game is that Seattle have never beaten LAFC. So in the four meetings between both of these two teams, as this is there's only been 2 years of history between both of these teams since LAFC just came in to the league last year. Seattle have never beaten LAFC, and that includes the first matchup where they of course lost to LAFC at home, even though they absolutely dominate that game. And I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to the last four head-to-head. And that the last time that both of these teams face each other at Bank of California Stadium, it was LAFC putting an absolute smacking on the Seattle Sounders by winning 4-1 in that game. The second thing to watch out for this game is injuries. So both of these teams do have players that is questionable coming into this game. For LAFC, the big question is, will Marc-Anthony Kaye be ready for this game? They didn't really miss him that much as I thought it would be in the last game, which that just kind of shows you how this team just have tons of depth, and that even when they're losing one of their main piece in midfield, they have that next man mentality of the fact that the next man up, which in this case is Lee Gwyn, he of course stepped up into that role, and that, that's why LAFC throughout this season has considered probably the best ever team in MLS history, because they check all the mark in terms of what makes a MLS team being the greatest of all time. And the only thing that is left to say that they are the greatest team of all time is obviously win MLS Cup this year. For Seattle, they have Roman Torres as questionable coming into this game, and I believe he did not play in that last game against RSL, and that once again he's going to be questionable in this one. And in some way that's kind of big for Seattle because, there's still a lot of question about this Sounders defense, which I'll get to when I talk about the fourth thing we're going to watch out for this game. But the third thing we're going to watch out for this game is that this might be a low-score game, despite the fact that both of these teams have a lot of attacking arsenal and questionable defense. And I'm not quite sure if this is a big surprise, because when you look at these conference final matchup, usually they tends to be a little bit low score, and that it's not going to be like what we saw in the opening round or in El Tráfico, where it's going to end like 5-3 or something like that. And to be fair, in the beginning, when I look at this matchup, I was very tempting to say that this could be a high-scoring matchup because of the fact that both teams have arguably the best attack in the league. Obviously, LAFC has the best attack in the league with the likes of Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, Diamande, and all the other attacking arsenal that they had, while the Sounders have Jordan Morris, Raul Ruidiaz, and also Lidero in their attacking arsenal. So both teams have good attacking arsenal, and that they of course are facing questionable defense that you don't know exactly if they're going to perform. But something tells me, since it is the conference final, and I'm pretty sure both team is going to try to maybe play a little bit conservatively, and that something tells me that the reason why I could think that this could be a low scoring game is where I'm going to be talking about the keys to victories and how I feel like the way that this game is going to be a low scoring game is that the Seattle Sounders is somehow going to try to make this a low scoring game by playing physical and just trying to play very physical against this LAFC attack and trying to slow them down as much as possible to make this kind of a lower score game that many people would have thought despite all the talented attack that is going on the pitch. Now, the other thing that I want to look out for this game and something that I kind of mentioned is that can the Sounders defense stop this LAFC juggernaut attack? I mean, like I said, with Roman Torres not being available in this game, well, he's being questionable in this game. And if he's not available in this game, that means Xavier Arriaga is going to have to step into this game. And Arriaga, he has some bright moments in this season with the Sounders, but he also had some very dumb moments for the Sounders this season. And, he's also a very young defender, and that I'm not quite sure I would really trust a very young, inexperienced defender that never been in this situation before where you are playing in a conference final against the best team in the league and, expect to stop this attack in the most important game of the season. That is just a lot to ask in terms of a young defender like Xavier Arriaga. So, yeah, that could be a very questionable mark with the Sounders defense, and that I really think if this Sounders defense cannot stop this LAFC juggernaut attack, they are definitely going to be doomed in this game. And as much as they do have their own attacking pieces, I just don't like if this game is going to be a high-scoring game, I would favor LAFC in this one because, throughout this season, even in some of those high-scoring games, they have shown that they've been able to outscore their opponent, even though their defense is not playing at its best. And that, just as the Galaxy, in terms of how it went when you tried to play the high-scoring game and tried to play an open game where, if you decided to play an open game in this, it is all over for you because LAFC would love to play that open game. They would love to try to use that transitional attack and trying to just go at you, and that I just think the Sounders are not going to try to do that, and that they're going to have to try to be a little bit defensive and try to make sure that even though their defense this season hasn't been as good as previous year, and obviously the reason to that is because they lost their longtime defensive rock Chad Marshall to retirement earlier this season, and also they lost Ozzy Alonso to Minnesota last season when he, of course, left Seattle for Minnesota, part of that trade. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see this weaker Sounders defense of how are they going to anchor this LAFC juggernaut attack that is just incredible. And before Sounders fan tell me that, well, why should I be worried about the fact that our defense is not very good when we basically in the last 4 match have 3 out of the 4 match that ends up into a clean sheet by this defense, and also we have Stephen Fry in goal, which is one of the best goalkeeper in the league. Well, yes, they do have clean sheet 3 out of the 4 games, but when you look at the 3 games that they got clean sheet, who were their opponents? Minnesota, San Jose, and also in the last game, Real Salt Lake. Those attack, no offense to those teams in terms of the attack, but to compare that attack to the LAFC attack, and in the words of Zlatan, is basically comparing Fiat and Ferrari, and that the Fiat is basically the attack from Minnesota, RSL, and San Jose, and the Ferrari is basically this LAFC attack. This attack is nothing that the Sounders have faced in the last couple of games, and that does makes me very concerned about this defense. And finally, the last thing I want to watch out for this game, and it's not really kind of a watch out thing, more like if LAFC, of course, win this match, they, of course, will be hosting MLS Cup. And, I think everybody knows that since when they are the Supporters Shield winner, and that when you're the Supporters Shield winner, basically you don't really need to travel on the road under this single playoff elimination, and that you basically just get to stay home and have that home field advantage of playing in front of your home crowd so that you can, of course, move on into MLS Cup and potentially claiming the ultimate prize. Now, the Sounders still could host MLS Cup, although the Sounders, if they want to host MLS Cup, they will definitely be rooting for TFC in terms of tomorrow's matchup, where in case if they do win this game and pull off an upset against LAFC, they're definitely going to be rooting for TFC to beat Atlanta, so that if Atlanta does lose that game, then they, of course, will be the host in terms of MLS Cup. Now, in terms of keys to victory, and I think throughout this video I kind of talk about the keys to victory for both of these teams. And for LAFC, I kind of kept it very simple for them, is do what they've been doing all season. I mean, it's clear that when you look at what they have been doing all season has been nothing short of remarkable, and that, you know, if they, of course, are going to be like the team for majority of the regular season, where their attack is going to be incredible, and that is just, they're just kind of running people's over with their attacking firepower, and also play some good defense in the back, then I think LAFC should easily win this one. And that, you know, if LAFC does show close to where they're at its best, nobody in this league is able to stop this team. Now, for the Sounders, their key to victory is definitely they need to play gritty in this game, and that they have to try to use this gritty physical game on LAFC so that they, of course, can stop them on the attack. And the other thing that they could also do is trying to maybe sit back a little bit and try to absorb pressure and try to hit LAFC on the counterattack. One of the biggest kryptonite of this LAFC team throughout this season has been when they do throw men forward, and that I think this team, out of every single team, probably have thrown the most men forward on the attack, which kind of explains why they have been scoring so many goals this season. And the reason why they've been so successful with it is that when they throw men forward, they're able to score goals, and that, you know, the opponent, sometimes when they try to counterattack them, they usually don't do very well because they, of course, would be stopped in the midfield. Well, for the Sounders, they, you know, even though teams have tried to counter-attack them, and some of them haven't been successful, there are also some that has also been very successful in terms of counter-attack them. And that the other thing that the Sounders just need, whenever, you know, this is a cliche with underdogs team, whenever you're the underdogs team coming into a big playoff match like this one, take your opportunity. When you get the chances to score those goals, you better score those goals. Because if you do not score those goals, if the Sounders are not being clinical in this game in front of goal, there is no way in the world they are going to get the victory here. And, you know, it's kind of the truth when you look at all these underdogs that have been unable to move on into the next round, despite the fact that they've been playing very well. The problem is they didn't take their chances, and that's why they weren't able to pull off the upset and move on into the next round of the playoffs. So that's something that the Sounders do need in this game. And then finally, in terms of the last 4 head-to-head matchup, as I mentioned earlier, LAFC beat Seattle in the last match 4-1. Then in the earlier season matchup, it was actually a 1-1 draw between Seattle and LAFC, and this was kind of a remarkable game for the Sounders because they were down to 10 men for 70 minutes in this game, and we all thought that this was going to be disaster for the Sounders, and yet somehow they're able to got out of that game with a 1-1 draw. But last season they lost both of the meeting, and pretty much by the same score, and I actually wrote the wrong score for the first meeting. As you can see, I wrote Seattle winning 1-0 against LAFC. That's actually wrong. It should be LAFC winning 1-0 against the Sounders. And then in the last season home matchup, it was LAFC with a last-minute goal, and a game that I remember they scored not only on that last-minute goal, but it was an absolute howler by Stefan Frey, where he basically just dropped a free kick that Lawrence Simon strike, and that's how LAFC, of course, got the win. And I also remember this was the first ever game at Bank of California Stadium, and it's kind of hard to believe the first ever goal for LAFC at Bank of California Stadium is actually all due to a goalkeeping error, and it was kind of a gift that Seattle handed in that game. And In that game where I feel like Seattle was kind of trying to play that gritty, physical kind of attack, and that they're trying to slow down this LAFC attacking power team. I think that is something that, when you look at what happened in that game, this is something that Seattle is going to look back and say that this is something we need to do in this game and able to get a win in this one. It might not be pretty, and they might not win by a lot of goals, but at the end of the day, at this point of the season, it doesn't matter how pretty or ugly you win a game, as long as after 90 minutes or even after 120 or in a penalty kick shootout that you walk out of that with a victory and you're moving on to MLS Cup. Nobody's going to remember the performance that they had, and nobody's going to be doubting, well, they didn't play very well, and that, but still they of course move on. And I think the only thing I will say that maybe people will doubt in terms of going down in terms of the future of the fact that, well, they of course move on, but they kind of got a little bit help of the referee. And so far in the playoffs this season, referee decision has been pretty decent so far. I mean, I know there are a couple people that's been complaining about the fact that there's some calls that should have gone to VAR, and that also VAR haven't been used very often, if any, during this season, which I kind of like it in the fact that they're not using it in the playoffs, because it does not disrupt the rhythm of the game, and that I like the fact that they decided to kind of let things go just so that the game can keep going flow, and that I still haven't seen a game where I really think this game was decided because of a bad refereeing decision. So, so far so good in terms of how my fear of the fact that how bad the refereeing was in the regular season, and that I was worried in the playoffs there's going to be that one outrageous call that will just completely goes against a team, and that is the reason why they got eliminated. And I'm not saying that it can still happen, and that it could still happen in these two games that I, of course, will talk about. But let's just hope it's going to be a clean game, and that after the end of this game, we are not going to be talking about refereeing decision as one of the big reasons why the team, of course, got eliminated from the playoffs. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I'll, of course, will see you guys next time. And also, I am going to be changing the words right now to ready to do the preview for the second conference final matchup between TFC and Atlanta United.